We can start from the top. Good morning, everybody.
Oh, from the
Miss
first time?
Henry speaking. So we're continuing the presentation on natural resources. We started yesterday, but because of, you know, time constraints, we had to end early. So let's begin. All right, so yesterday we discussed, yesterday we covered water as a resource, wind as a resource, and also natural gas and crude oil as resources, all things that are found naturally in our environment and can be either renewable or non-renewable. Next slide, please. Okay, next slide. We had also covered this. So land as a resource. So I don't have a definition of land here because I'm, pretty sure we all know what land is. Land is that surface on top of the earth that we all live on. We all interact with animals on top of it. What water is on top of it. We have trees on top of it. Our houses are on top of it. Land is the place that we utilize in order to make use of all the other resources that exist on earth. So land is a resource itself as it offers space for construction. Depending on its topography, which topography means the shape of the land, so whether it's flat or whether it's a hilly area or a sloped area, land can also be used for construction of roads, housing, places of business, and other industrial purposes. Resources are available from the land itself. So even though we use the surface of the land to build structures for us to move from one place to another, or for us to live here or there, we can also get stuff from the land. So thus, agricultural land can contain natural fertilizer for the growth of products sown. So when we put things into the earth nurtures it, right? Plants specifically, crops, etc. Earth nurtures it so it can become a tree, so it can become things that we need to survive. And then land hosts underground water, the various minerals and ores, such as gold, timber, coal, iron ores, uranium, oil, water, soil, air, plants, and animals. So land is one of the ultimate resources. Just like water, land is very important to human life and also for the preservation of the environment and animal life as well. Next slide, please. And from the land, we get stuff that are considered as resources. So land itself is a resource, and from it we get things that are resources so that we can use those for economic gain. So land is used for residential purposes. So for building houses, it's used for agricultural purposes, for us to grow our crops, etc. For recreational purposes and sports. So we jog on land, we play table tennis on land, we do most activities on land. For transportation, if it wasn't for the land beneath our feet, the earth beneath our feet, then we wouldn't have cars to run on the roads, right? The land itself is essential for us to have on earth transportation, land transportation to be specific, and commercial use. So the land itself, people sell land for commercial purposes, and people build on land so that they can have their companies there, and through their companies they can utilize other resources to make money. So land is very important to our everyday life and for the structures that we need to make in order for us to make a living or have a home. Next slide, please. So animal resources. So I'm pretty sure some of us may not think that animals are resources. Like, how can you exploit an animal for monetary gain? But here's how. For humans, animals are a productive resource source. First of all, They supply a wide variety of foods that man needs to survive. Milk, cheese, eggs, butter, salami, and cold meat, etc. Some animal species, such as coral and oysters, are used by man to produce jewel and handcrafts. So here you see, we have animals from all over the world that we use for various purposes. We might think they're just here for nature, but men have found a way to utilize the animals' bodies or their abilities to make money. And as a result, right, the hide of some animals is used instead to produce clothes. In many places across the world, animals are still one of the main means of transport. So, for example, back in the days in Jamaica, and even now in some places, our grandparents used to ride on, horses to get from point A to B, or grandparents used to ride on the donkeys or use the donkeys to transport, you know, the goods from the farms to the markets, etc. And for instance, camels are particularly used in such desert areas as the Sahara Desert, while in northern areas, sleighs are drawn by huskies, dogs, and dogs that are very resistant to cold and fatigue. So even though we have come to use a myriad of technology to create different means of transportation, and we've been doing it for years. There are some places in the world that still utilize animals for transportation. Next slide, please. So this is an example of an animal that is used for a myriad to produce a myriad of resources. So this is a pig. No other animal provides society with a wider range of products than the hog. Byproducts from Byproducts from pigs play a vital, though less visible role in maintaining and improving the quality of human life. And this is true, like pig byproducts are in almost everything. So if you look over here on the right hand, the upper right hand corner, we'll see that is used for making chewing gum and candies. I'm pretty sure not everybody knew that. So there are byproducts from the pig that are used in chewing gum and candies. Their hair is used for the brushes in our artist brushes, our paint brushes. We use their rennet for cheese, their hearts for xenotransplantation. We use their gelatin, which is basically, you know, something within the pig itself to make drug capsules. So has a mommy ever shown you the pills that look like these? They're like they have these oval shape and they look like plastic. It's not actually plastic. It's gelatin from the pigs that are smoothed down. Mm-hmm. To look like that. So when you do ingest it, your body breaks it down. If it was plastic, then it would be much harder or much unhealthier for your body to break down this. So it really makes sense where they use something, a natural product from the pig. Ingredients for surgical sutures, insulin for medication. So we get insulin from pigs. Industrial lubricants, fatty acids, and glycerols are used for matches. So we use pigs to help make products in matches, things for matches. Gelatin for marshmallows. So pig byproducts are in marshmallows and photographic film. We also use pig for pet food. Somebody made a comment. That's so sad. Well, yeah, but you know how humans are. We try to make the most out of everything. We use them to make linoleum, so that thing that mommy or your grandma, lays on the floor, that plastic looking thing, that comes from pigs. Glycerine for explosives and antifreeze, hides and skins for leather goods, drum heads, bone china, so cups basically, violin strings, phonograph, porcine burn dressing, pigskin footballs, and cutting oil. So this pig alone, one pig or a bunch of pigs, this species of animal can make a wide variety of things. And that's how we use animals as a resource for transmission and also to make byproducts from the animals themselves. Next slide, please. So precious metals, minerals, and rocks. So does anybody own any precious metals, minerals, or perhaps rocks? No. No, you sure? When you think of precious metals, think about gold, think about silver, think about steel. These are things we usually have in our houses, whether or not you think. There are little pieces of gold in your laptop. You know, gold helps with the electrical transmission of things within your laptop. There are little pieces of gold in your TV. Not enough for you to break the TV apart and get a good amount of money. Like if you do take that out,
Yes, you have a
you
precious
can't
metal.
afford to buy another TV. You can't afford to buy a whole TV with that little bit amount of gold that's in it. But, you know, it's good to know that you have some precious metals somewhere. Steel and all of that found right within your house. So mineral resources are the quantity of natural concentrations of solid, liquid, and gaseous materials in or on the Earth's crust. Example, diamonds and quartz. So mommy's ring or daddy's chain has, you know, minerals in it. So that stone on mommy's ring or the stones on your necklace or your earrings, they're probably diamonds, they're probably quartz. And fun fact, probably should have included a picture of this, but diamonds, if you look up diamonds and quartz kind of look the same. They're both clear, they're both usually sharp, but quartz are used to make glass and diamonds are used to cut glass. So quartz are much weaker in comparison to diamonds. Diamonds are really strong and are used to cut glass and other things. So yeah, precious metals are rare. Naturally occurring metallic chemical, they are naturally occurring metallic chemical element of high economic value. So chemically, the precious metals tend to be less reactive than most elements, example, gold and silver. And why do I say it's less reactive? There are some metals in the earth that when you expose them to other things, it just starts to break apart or it doesn't hold up. If you put it in water, it will have a bad reaction, it will bubble and stuff like that. But metals like gold, metals like silver, metals like that, they are resilient and they stand the test of time and they don't change color, right? You know, some metals that are like fake gold or whatever, you know, they change color over time, but gold never changes its color unless it's on the surface of the earth. And silver is also quite resilient. um they're they are extracted through mining the Earth's crust. And I didn't include this on the slide, but we have something called ores. And from ores, we get other metals that we use on a daily basis. And they're not so precious as the gold and the silver. But for example, in Manchester or in St. Elizabeth, we have a lot of mining areas where they get bauxite, right? And the bauxite contains alumina. And then when they convert the alumina, when they process the alumina, it's turned into aluminum. And then they use aluminum to make aluminum foil, etc. And the ore is actually a combination of a lot of minerals. So there are a lot of minerals that are in ores, but minerals are not ores. Kind of like how a rectangle is a square, but a square is not a rectangle. Next slide, please. Okay, so, oh, I jumped the gun, but yes, minerals used in transport and technology. Number one, cars. So hematite is used in cars. Many minerals are needed to make a car. Iron is used to make the steel, and it makes up the bulk of the car and comes from minerals like magnetite and hematite. So iron comes from this mineral, right? So this contributes to making the car. Electricity, it comes from, well, some places in the world still use coal, but Jamaica, I don't think Jamaica uses coal at all. We use mostly um, natural gases and oils, fossil fuels. But yeah, in some places of the earth, on Earth, coal as a mineral is used to produce electricity. Tire stopping. So you have asbestos. Asbestos is used to make brakes that can, oh, most brakes can be made from asbestos materials. But we now know that asbestos is bad for us. Asbestos causes cancer. And asbestos is also used it was used in previous years as an insulating material for buildings. So now we use like cotton and foaming kind of agents whenever we're making drywall and so on. But back in the day, before those, we used asbestos. But now we're finding out that asbestos is cancerous, and there's a building in Jamaica that is completely filled with asbestos because it was built back in the time when asbestos was the thing. And now, you know, persons who work there, they have to be screened for cancer, and that building is completely shut off. Like nobody is allowed to enter that building. All right, so bauxite, as I mentioned earlier, it's mined in Jamaica. I think it's the only or the main source, the main reason why we mine in Jamaica. Two metals, aluminum and titanium, are used a lot in airplanes because they are lightweight and strong. Aluminum comes from a material called bauxite, and titanium comes from minerals called rutile and I can't say that, ilmenite. But I just remembered, Jamaica also mines for limestone, and we use limestone to make
Lime tree.
oh well no. We use limestone to make our blocks. So the blocks that make your house are made of limestone, and the limestone is mined from mountainous areas in Jamaica. So if you're driving anywhere in Jamaica and you see
Limestone's
like a
red.
dugout,
Has a reddish color.
well, bauxite is red. So bauxite that gives you aluminum, that's red, but limestone itself is white. So if you're driving along a road in Jamaica, preferably if you're going towards St. Thomas, and you look up at the mountain right when you're at Bull Bay, you'll see that there's a big dugout section, and the dugout section is completely white. That's because they're mining for bauxite. The entire mountain is made of bauxite, and they take it out to make blocks and sell it to us. And as I mentioned, the quartz is in the computers, it's on the glass, um, and mica is also used in electronics. Next slide, please. So, most minerals, precious stones, and ores are used to make jewelry. So, like 50% of the gold that we use, the diamonds that we use, etc., the diamonds that we mine, etc., they are used to make jewelry. So that's a very lucrative industry. And then the remainder are used to make electronics, and for the metals themselves, they are used to make coins, and then we have other uses for them. Next slide, please. Forest reserves. All right, I don't have it on this slide, I have it on the other one. So we all know what a forest is. A forest is a community of trees, shrubs, herbs, and associated plants and organisms that cover a considerable area, a large area. It is considered a resource because its contents can be exploited in a myriad of ways for economic gain. How do you think people use forests? What do they use forests for? Perhaps the trees. What do we use trees to do or trees take? You're probably sitting on something that came from a tree right now.
Pencils.
No, pencils. Okay, that's one. We use them to make chairs as well, and even paper. We cut down trees, and that contributes to deforestation in order for us to have stuff like timber and other types of wood so that we can make our chairs, so that we can make our pencils, so that we can make our window frames, etc. Next slide, please. So uses of forest reserves. So the benefit we benefit from the carbon sequestration or the conservation. So when we have a lot of trees, carbon dioxide is absorbed at a faster rate, right? So that's why when we cut down the trees, the place is hotter. Carbon dioxide is a gas that, basically traps heat. So when we have more trees, the trees trap the carbon dioxide and use it so that the place is cooler. So that's one thing. We use trees to create timber, and then the timber goes on to create your bed frame. The timber goes on to create your table or your, well, not in Jamaica, but like it's used for the wooden fireplaces, etc. So, in some places as well, even in Jamaica, we use the wood to make houses, and we use it for a myriad of other reasons. But what can anybody guess what the main use of trees are? Well, is
Paper,
good guess, good guess. Anybody else guess?
furniture,
Samson guessing twice. Anybody else? Anybody else?
houses,
Okay. You're all correct. You're all correct. The main main uses are for paper, for housing, and yeah, just for the wood, and also for for the provision of food. But one thing that we might not think about is the fact that we use forest areas to create land space for housing, etc. So usually what happens after trees are cut down is in some areas, the wood isn't necessarily used for anything good. So for example, if it's a forest with a bunch of random trees, then some of the trees wouldn't have wood that they can use to make other stuff. So for example, when Jamaica was making the North-South Highway, we were clearing out a lot of the trees on the mountains in order to, make the pathway. And in that process, I'm pretty sure that there were some trees that were not that didn't have the ideal wooded structure for us to make stuff like pencils or paper or stools, etc. from them. And as a result, some trees are grown into small pieces and discarded. Yeah. So not only do we use trees themselves, but we also use the space that they're on to accommodate housing and to accommodate the making of roads, etc. Next slide, please. Okay. So this one is, oh yes, before we move on to geothermal energy, I forgot to mention that trees are also used for biofuel. Mm-hmm. Biofuel. And biofuel is basically when they, well, it's usually the combination of dead animals and dead leaves and dead trees and so on that are processed and created and to make a sort of fuel that we can use. But not all cars can use it, but that's one way that we can use um, trees or forest reserves in a sustainable way, because that's a kind of method that is renewable. So that's good. So that's good. Geothermal energy. Geothermal energy is heat derived from within the subsurface of the earth. Water and or steam carry the geothermal energy to the earth's surface, and depending on its characteristics, geothermal energy can be used for heating and cooling purposes or be harnessed to generate clean electricity. So geothermal energy, basically, inside of the earth is hot, 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 right? But humans found a way to turn all that heat energy into electricity, or to use that heat energy to make other stuff warm or for other reasons. But can anybody tell me why exactly the inside of the earth is so hot? Where does all this heat come from?
The core of the earth, because people say that the core of the earth is molten lava.
The mantle. The mantle is liquid, and then the absolute core is a hot iron ball. Um, so yeah, beneath the Earth's crust, and we live on the Earth's crust. We walk on the Earth's crust. This is land. Beneath all of this land, there's a lot of hot magma, right? The same kind of red stuff that you see come out of um, volcanoes, etc. And because there's all of that hot magma underneath, that heat, it ends up being transferred to water bodies sometimes. So there are some places on Earth that have a lot of magma really close to its surface. For example, Iceland. Does anybody know Iceland? So Iceland is a little bit above Canada. So it's really cold up there, but they have a lot of volcanic activity. So it's an island, and it has a lot of volcanic activity. They have volcanoes, they have hot springs, a lot of heat coming from underneath the island. And because there's so much magma close to the surface, it ends up warming up everything around it. So the water bodies get warmer, and then they use that heat energy to either run into the houses so that they can stay warm in the wintertime, which is a lot most of the year, or to also power their factories and their homes through hydropower. Next slide, please. Okay, so how geothermal energy works. So let's start from the bottom. Let's start from the bottom. So we have water that is about 125 degrees Celsius. So that's way above boiling point. So we have that way underneath the surface of the earth, right? And then we have the power plant. The power plant extracts all of that, or like half of it, and brings it up to its level. And then what it does is cool down the water. So it moves from 125 degrees Celsius to 80 degrees Celsius. So that's on the orange side. But how does it do this? They take water that's already cool. So this water is like 4 degrees Celsius, really cool. And they run them alongside each other. or they run the cool water into the warm water. And once that happens, both waters of the different temperature, they work together to ensure that the entire body of water that's interacting becomes cooler. Perfect example. When you have um a really hot when you have really hot tea, does anybody here put ice in their tea to make the tea get cooler?
Sometimes.
So that's basically what they do.
I like my
They
tea
take,
hot. Just
oh,
do that.
okay. I like my tea moderately warm, like lukewarm. So I do put ice in my tea sometimes and call it iced tea. But this is basically what happens. They take the hot water, or in our case, thinking about the tea, and they take the cool water and they let them interact with each other. And then at the end of the day, or at the end of the interaction, the entire body of water is cooler. And as a result, well, the entire body of warm water is now cooler, right? So they pump that into other areas. But in some cases, instead of just mixing all the water together, they allow the pipes to run beside each other. And this is the same case where you would have your tea, and instead of you dropping ice in the tea, you might put the tea in a cool bath of water, or not bath of water, like you have a bowl and you dip the tea cup into it so that it would, become cooler. They allow the pipes to run beside each other, and then the cooler water gets warmer, and it's warm enough to keep a fishing tank just at the right temperature. And so the warm water, the 80 degrees Celsius water goes to swimming pools, and it goes to warmer houses, and it goes to factories that then use that water to boil shrimp, dry wood, process wool, I should say, process heating and hardwood processing, etc. So warm water from geothermal energy can be used for all of those things. So that's naturally heated water. No energy, no fossil fuels are required. It's naturally hot from from underneath the earth. And then, yeah, next slide, please. So renewable and non-renewable energy. So there are renewable sources of energy and non-renewable sources of energy. And we had discussed this yesterday. Does anybody remember what exactly a renewable source of energy, what classifies something as a renewable source of energy and what classifies it as a non-renewable source?
That it can be used again.
Not quite, because both of them can be, but there's something more specific. One of them can be used more times than the other one. That's okay. Renewable energy is energy that can always be replenished. So renewable energy never ends. It's a never-ending cycle of energy. So for example, well, I'll explain them afterwards. And then non-renewable energy is energy that will eventually run out, or a source of energy that will eventually run out. So after you use this amount, it finishes. So let me give you a perfect example, an in-house scenario. Non-renewable energy is like a small packet of Kool-Aid. When you're making the juice, you throw all of it in there at once, and it's done. It's finished. There's nothing you can do to get back Kool-Aid into the package, because that's all you bought, and it finishes there. But renewable energy is like a life supply of Kool-Aid. So you have all these packets put down, and as much as you want to use them, they're always going to be there because you have as much as exists in the world. So renewable energy is like solar energy. We can't use up the sun. There's absolutely no way on earth we can use up the sun. Sun will always be here and will always be able to utilize its heat to as a source of energy. Biomass biomass energy. Trees. There's, a lot of times that we as humans exploit trees and cause deforestation and all of that. But no matter what we do on Earth, um, I don't think it's possible for us to eliminate every single tree on the face of the Earth. And in order for us to maintain biofuel or to have forests or biodiversity, etc., we can plant back the trees. So even though we can use a lot of our trees, the plus side is that we can create more trees, meaning we can allow more trees to grow, we can plant more trees. So even though we can use it, we can replace it, or it can replace itself naturally. So that's renewable. It's always going to replenish, it's always going to return. Wind energy. No way, there's no way on earth that we can use up the wind. The wind will always blow and it's out of our control. We can't stop the wind, and so it's a renewable source of energy. Geothermal energy. All the heat that's underneath the surface of the earth, we can never we can't cool it down. We can't stop it from being hot. And yeah, so the heat, it's always going to be warm underneath the earth. And so we can always rely on that sort of heat, that geothermal heat, the underground heat to exist, because there's nothing that we can do to run out of it. Hydropower. Again, once we use up water, it usually returns, unless it's like an area that's experiencing drought or cut off from the rest of other water bodies. But water is a renewable resource because it's always going to come back somewhere on Earth. The water cycle is continuous, and so water is always being replenished on Earth. So even if there's not water in one area, there's always water in another area on Earth. Water is something that will never disappear. If water disappears from Earth, no. All of these sources of energy disappear from Earth, then we as humans will cease to exist as well. Non-renewable energy. So fossil fuels. Fossil fuels, as we stated yesterday, are fuels that we get from within the earth. They're oily substances, they are black, and we can find them on land, inland, or under the seafloor, right? But because there are pockets of them and because they take so long to reform, and I used to, when I was younger, I used to call them dinosaur juice, because it's formed when creatures die, and then over many years, that's longer than one human can live, or like 10 generations of humans can live. Their body and their bones and everything are under pressure, under heat, and they form this oil. But in order for, when we are capable of using up all of it, right? And that's why most of the world is trying to move away from using only fossil fuels, combining it with renewable energy sources in order to sustain their countries. There will probably come a day where we won't have enough fossil fuels, but hopefully by that day we'll we would have transitioned to renewable sources of energy. Nuclear energy is also non-renewable. There are only so many. Oh, I got a message. Try to, oh, yeah, so there are only so many sources of nuclear power on Earth, and as such, we can use them up. It's a limited supply. Coal as well, coal, like fossil fuel oil, those are in limited supply as well, as they take a long time to form. And the natural gas would fall in the same category as fossil fuels. So I believe this is all. Norika, Could you go on the next slide, please?
Hold on.
Oh, it's finished. So this is the end of the presentation. I hope you have learned something about natural resources, something that you didn't know before. Has